What's up, nerds? Seth here to help you level up your fandom. Welcome back to another Space Castle VR devlog. In this one, we are going to set up the real Unity Space Castle project. No more test projects. We're going to get all the packages that I need installed. We're going to get kind of an initial scene setup, and most importantly, we're going to get the XR rig and player character prefab constructed and assembled and customized just the way I like it, so that Locomotion works how I want and I can grab things and things like that, so that we have our at least initial player character prefab ready to go. So it'll be a little bit of a shorter one this time, but let's just jump right into it. Okay, so first things first, we're going to start up a new project. You can see right here, Unity Hub. I've got just a regular 3D core and just gonna name it SpaceCastleVR, so we'll get that going. New project, so first thing that I always do is change the layout back to how I like it. And then step number one is we need to create the folder structure for this project. And how we're going to do that is basically right here, just inside assets, we are going to make a new folder. I'm just going to label this Space Castle VR assets. That way I know that anything that I'm working with that I have done will live inside here. That way I don't have to worry about confusing it with other packages or things like that. And then we just need to make folders for each of the categories of things that I want. I'm going to start with and finally, for now, just UI, which is where I'll put like logos and icons and things like that. And then what we can do is just this initial scenes folder, we can just drag that right in there. That way we don't have to make a new scenes folder. Next up, what I'm going to do is I want to both have our actual game scenes, so like the bridge or things like that, but also a place that I can experiment here without having to mess with the production scenes. So basically what I'm going to do is just rename this to Playground, and that will need to reload this, which is fine because there's nothing here. Now let's get our packages in here. So first things first, we need to install XR plugin management package, and then we're going to install XR interaction toolkit, and then AutoHand, and then the universal render pipeline. Unity registry. So you can see, I see several preview modules here, or preview packages, but no XR interaction toolkit. So I actually have to add it manually. And I can do that by coming up here to the plus sign, going to add package by name, and we're just going to type it in by name. So all packages our Unity packages are com.unity as the entity. And then this one is XR Interaction Toolkit. So we're just gonna add that package. It's gonna ask us to restart because it has a new set of inputs, which we're going to do. Yes, I didn't need to make a backup, it's brand new. Now, one more thing we need to add from the XR Interaction Toolkit, and that is starter assets. And what that's gonna do is give us a default input action map. Okay. Next up, let's go to my assets, and we need to add in AutoHand, which is, if you haven't seen earlier parts of this series, it is the interaction toolkit and manipulation set that I have decided I wanted to use, as seen in previous episodes. Okay, I am not going to add in the advanced FPS counter, which is one of my favorite things, but I'm not going to do that now. What I am going to do is add the new universal render pipeline. Okay, now that that has been added, let's kind of blaze through this next part of this setup. What we're going to do is add XR Origin VR, which will do two things. It will add the actual Origin character, which we don't want because we have the prefab from AutoHand, so we're just going to get rid of that. But it will add an XR interaction manager, which you can do manually, but I'm lazy. Then we are going to add manually an XR input action manager as an empty. And attached to that, we're going to XR input. We are just going to type in input, which will give us input action manager, and we're going to add that as a component. We're going to do this drop down, click the plus icon, and add the XRI default input actions. Okay, so now we have that. Speaking of which, let's head down into our project settings here and go to our XR interaction toolkit sample or starter assets. And then we've got a couple of like preset actions and stuff here. What I'm going to do is add the left controller and the right controller to our default. How we do that is by clicking on this, and then in this upper right hand corner you can see add to action based controller default button. Click on that and we're good. Do the same thing with the right hand controller. Excellent. Now what we want to do is open this action map, and we're going to deal with kind of two windows here. So we're just going to juggle this a bit. Let's head back into our SCVR assets down here. And I'm going to, just in the root folder, since this doesn't really fit into a good subfolder, we're going to create input actions. That's going to give us another input action map like we just opened. I'm going to name this SCVR input map. Yeah, cool. And then we're going to open that. Now we have two input action maps. So first thing we need to do is create an actual action map in our custom input actions. I'm just going to name this SCVR. It's a good idea to prefix your action maps with something specific. You can see the default has XRI, which is XR Interaction Toolkit. Labeling mine SCVR. There's also an input action map that comes with AutoHand that's prefixed with AutoHand and sometimes AH, just so you can keep track in a big list of all of the input actions. I'm going to name this one a little bit more specific. With these action maps, you can see with the XRI version, you want to kind of be somewhat specific. So left hand, right hand, interaction, locomotion, that kind of thing. And since all I need to do is fix the teleportation defaults for the AutoHand prefab, all I need to do is kind of overwrite the teleportation actions. So I'm only going to deal with the right hand locomotion for now. This may change in the future. And you can name these action maps whatever you want. I just kind of follow the naming convention. We can get rid of this action. And the reason we want this default one open is we're going to go to the XRI interaction, and there is a teleport mode activate. This has a couple of things already. So what we're just going to do is copy this. We're going to paste that into our new action map. The way I like to interact is you push forward on the stick to start your teleportation action, and then when you let go of the stick, you teleport. The default auto hand behavior is a click of the right stick, which I don't like. It doesn't feel good to use. So we need to make sure that the primary axis here in our sector interaction is north, which means only push forward. That's it. And then once it's pushed forward, the sweep behavior being locked means I can then move the stick around and it won't change. I have to physically let go of it for it to return back to normal, which is good. That's what we want. Next, I need to add a new action here, which I'm just going to call teleport go. So we can distinguish these here by minimize by teleport mode activate, which makes me think that the teleportation mode is activating, right? So like it's preparing me to teleport, and then teleport go is to actually do the teleportation. For this, we just need it to be a release of the stick. So what we're gonna do is copy this primary axis 2D because it's kind of a pain in the ass to search through the path and find the right one. So all I'm going to do is paste that here, get rid of this initial binding. Then I have basically a duplicate, right? What we need to do now is we're not looking for a north direction push, so we can get rid of this sector interaction and do it a press. The reason we want to do press is because press let us do release only. And release only is just a return to a 0 point, which the press interaction is generally referring to a button press, which this maybe gets renamed as XR Interaction Toolkit, or this new input action system kind of gets worked on more and more. But that's the behavior we want, is to release this joystick press. So we are all good here. Next, we need to make sure we save the asset. Now, the reason we don't want to just add these actions into the XRI default input actions is because we don't control that. Okay, next up, what we're gonna do is replace and customize the character prefab from the demo scene from AutoHand into our own kind of customized prefab. And to do that, we need to come down into project settings, XR plugin management, and set that up by adding OpenXR. Excellent. If we click on this triangle, you'll see it needs at least one interaction profile. Just click edit, it'll take you right there. Make things a little easier. We're going to click on the plus icon, which is behind my head. And then make sure we click on Oculus. Right now, I'm only targeting the Oculus, so I'm not going to worry about other examples. We also need to add the same Oculus Touch controller profile to the Android version as well. Now, what we need to do is in AutoHand, Packages Setup, double click on the OpenXR, and that is just a handful of extra packages, including the prefab that we need to modify. So click on import. That prefab relies on basically everything else in that package, so just import the whole thing. Okay, then from there we can go to scenes, and now we have an OpenXR scene here, and same thing with our prefabs. And this OpenXR AutoHand player is the one that we are going to modify. Drag it into the scene here, and then in our prefabs folder for the assets that we control, we are going to first rename this to what I actually prefer to call it, and that is XR player character. Yay! Now that that's renamed, I can drag it into our prefabs folder, and we'll get a prompt that says, do you want to make this a prefab variant, or do you want to basically duplicate it and create an original new prefab? That's the one that we want, so we'll click on original prefab. And now we can double click on this and we will get into the prefab editor. There's a couple of things we need to do. First is that demo scene has two kinds of hands that you can switch between: the robot hands and a classic like fleshy version of a hand. I don't want that fleshy hand for lots of reasons, but definitely not in this prefab. So what we're going to do first is go through and remove all of the references to that, including these two classic hand prefabs, the classic hand offsets, and then we need to go onto the root XR player character prefab, and on the right hand side here you'll see a couple of offsets, and you can see now these right and left offsets have missing transforms because that's the hands we just deleted. So just highlight each one and remove it from each of the missing instances, otherwise you will get some errors. Don't ask me why the default here has two replicas of this XR hand offset script. There may be some parameter tweaks that are not public between the two of them, so I'm just going to leave it. Maybe optimize those down to one later. I'm not sure. I haven't dug that deeply into AutoHand's source yet because their documentation is frankly terrible. So I don't know. Next, we're going to click on this AutoHand player, which is the kind of prefab for the physical player in XR, not the hands. So the hands are kind of dealt with separately than the like body of the player, which is like your rigid body and capsule interactor, your colliders and things like that. The physical presence of the body, not the hands. We need to edit a few things in here. First, you can see this has some pretty good parameters, but since this is a single level spaceship deck situation, I don't want people climbing around and I don't want them to be platforming. What that means is when you teleport, you can normally by default here, you can like teleport and it will automatically deal with the flat surfaces. So if there's like a crate in front of you, AutoHand will automatically let you both teleport to the ground and on top of the crate. I don't want to allow that because I don't want people to be teleporting like on top of arcade cabinets and like clipping through the ceilings and stuff like that. So this is primarily for now. That may change as I start building out scenes, but for now, Space Castle VR is a primarily ground level affair. So to do that, we need to uncheck the enable climbing mechanic here on the right, and then also the enable platforming. Just uncheck both of those and we are good to go there. You can leave basically everything else in here as is because that's part of the prefab. Next, we're going to do some modification of the teleporter. So open up the right hand and click on the teleporter pointer. What we need to do is basically tell it to use the two interactions that we just made from our own toolkit. And you can see on this OpenXR teleporter link script here, we're basically just going to have it use input references that we just made. So click use reference on both of those and then open up the input reference and you can see this big list, but it's easy to pick out the ones we just made because they're prefixed with SCVR. So first one is the start teleport action, which we want on this teleport mode activate, which is the push forward on the stick. So we're just going to double click on that one. And then the finish teleport action, that is, there's two distinct functions in C# that they've built. And the start teleport action and the finish teleport action are two different things, obviously, but you don't actually move until the finish teleport action gets called. So start teleport action is the line renderer and the little teleport UI, and it goes red or green or whatever depending on what's available. That's also where it will snap to like teleportation anchors and stuff like that. That all happens during the start teleportation action function. The finish teleportation action will move the player if it's available, or get rid of the rest of the UI or whatever if it's unavailable. So finish teleport action is going to be our teleport go input that we just made, which is the actual like go do the teleport. Next up, what I want to do is just change the colors. So we're gonna open up this teleporter script, which will have a bunch of the cool stuff in it, including like angle of the line render and things like that. This is also where we will eventually replace the default ring teleportation point indicator with something that I will design at a later point, and this is where that happens. But first, I want to change this green color from like a green is go green to a space castle green, which happens to be a specific hex value. So just to change that, I'm gonna open up the color palette, switch to the hex, and paste in our little space castle green hex code here. And then you can see it's gonna fade to the wrong green. This is a more traditional kind of CSS gradient generator here, and each of these little tags denotes a color and transparency. So the bottom ones are colors, and the top flags are the transparency or alpha channel level. So you can see if I take this middle one, this is like the transition point. This is all 100% basically until this flag, and then it will transition to fully transparent, which is the black one. If I move this, you can see it showing it will get more and more transparent earlier and earlier in the ray, which I don't want. I want this about where it was. I think that's pretty good. That way it's nice and solid, but tapers off right at the end. I need to also change the second color here to our Space Castle green. That way the full gradient is that one color that just tapers off instead of also transitioning to a different color. What's really fun is you can use this to do like gradients of like rainbows or whatever. So if you pick up like a power up or something, your teleportation ray interactor may change. You can change this pretty easily that way, which is really fun. So now that we've got the prefab, we're good to go. Let's exit the prefab editor and let's just make kind of a quick demo scene. We need to get rid of the main camera because we have this prefab. Let's add a plane so we have something to stand on. What's really cool about AutoHand is it kind of automatically figures out horizontal surfaces, which you can adjust in the teleportation and player actions so that it will handle. Right now, by default, it's set to 45 degrees, which means basically anything that's less than 45 degrees, between 90 and 45, so flat, or 0, whatever, depending on your space, 0 and 45, it will allow you to move on automatically. So you don't have to worry about making like teleportation areas or rigid body situations with like all of your particular nuances of locomotion. Auto hand kind of just handles that for you, which I really like. Excellent. So we've got everything kind of in place. Next, what I want to do is make this sphere grabbable so we can make sure that our hands and all of that work good, which it should, because the prefab is pretty bulletproof, which is really nice. But all I got to do is search grabbable. So I'm just gonna leave that at like that. I need to also add a rigid body along with the grabbable script. So that's good. You just got it. Yeah, cool. This is all good to go. Okay, so we've got a little scene here. Now I think is a great time to test. Now, I'm terribly sorry for the real shitty frame rate that this is going to produce, because I have like a 780 Ti in my rig right now. Graphics cards have been really hard to come by. So I've got, 24 core CPU, but like a 2014 era graphics card. So it's gonna be bad, and I apologize for that. But we're just gonna make it through. We're gonna deal with it as it comes. So let's do that. I've got my headset and it's plugged in. I am not gonna bother. I'm just not gonna bother like putting it on. I'm just gonna hold it to my face. Turn that on. Great. We've got Oculus Link added already, or clicked on in the UI so that this is tethered to my computer. Perfect. Let's hit play here, and we will just grab like our right hand controller first. It's got to compile first. Okay. My graphics card is complete crap, so the frame rate is terrible, but that's my graphics card's problem. Let's see. Let's turn this controller on. Okay, cool. Left and right both work. If I move the left stick, I should be able to, smooth locomotion. Cool, great. Just like we want. And then with the right controller, if I push forward, I get the little teleportation thing, which this green looks a little weird actually, so I'm probably going to change that. But pushing forward gives me a teleportation icon, and letting go lets me move. The default is a snap turn. Great. Locomotion is good. Let's try grabbing. You can see the highlight is there. I don't really like the hand grab highlight, but it is kind of a neat effect. I'll give them that. Press the grab. Looks great. So grabbing works just fine. The physics look good. Yeah, it all looks great. Yeah, so that was good. Good interaction. Again, sorry for the frame rate. But we tested all the things we need to. The locomotion looks good. Both smooth locomotion on the left hand and teleportation on the right hand works as you push forward on the stick and then let go. Exactly what we want. So everything I think is good to go. Cool. So we have our player character all set up now, ready for the next step. And we have our full project. So we will just be operating in this project from now on. We have our playground scene, so I can do whatever I want there, and I can start constructing the actual levels and scenes of the real Space Castle. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've made it this far, do the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Check out maybe some of the other devlogs, or tell people about the series. It might be interesting for them to follow along. Check out Space Castle. It's a great podcast. We also have a YouTube series called Real Drunk, where we watch terrible movies and make bad drinking games, participate in that drinking game while we watch the movie, and then try really hard to review the movie while we're drunk. It's a blast. You should check it out. There'll be links to it in the doobly-doo. And that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.